We're now live on YouTube.
Well, that's an omen if ever there was one. That's never happened before. Did anybody notice I'd gone?
Yes, we did, Chairman. My heart was starting to race.
Not as much as mine was. Sorry. Okay. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us this morning. We will move on to our meeting. Good morning and welcome to the Broadland District Council Planning Committee on Wednesday, the 27th of January, 2021. Our virtual meeting. Thank you to all our officers who enable these virtual planning meetings to progress. Hopefully everything will run smoothly, but please be patient if we should find a few gremlins in the works, and we will endeavour to resolve any problems as quickly as possible. Our meeting today will be recorded and the meeting will be live streamed for public viewing on YouTube. The recording of this meeting will also be available on the Broadland District Council website. You should be aware any comments made in this meeting will be recorded indefinitely. Please can I ask everyone in attendance to ensure that when your microphones are unmuted, that you should try to keep the background noise to a minimum. Background noise can be very distracting from the discussion and information being relayed throughout the meeting. My name is Councillor Sue Lawn, Chairman of the Planning Committee. I will now ask our committee officer to proceed to a roll call for all the other members of our Planning Committee. Thank you, Officer Matthews.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I just ask, are you going to do the roll call with the declarations of interest?
Yes, Chairman. Would you just like to? Yeah.
And if I could just advise you that on behalf of all of the committee, that we have all been lobbied by our second applicant. So we will put that down as a declaration of interest now. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
If I do a roll call in alphabetical order, if members could confirm their attendance and also confirm if they have any other declarations other than the one the Chairman has just referred to. So that's Councillor Adams.
Present, no other declarations.
Councillor Beadle.
Present and no further declarations.
Councillor Copplestone.
Present, no declarations, and I haven't actually been lobbied by the second applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher.
Present and no declarations, thank you.
Councillor Fulcher.
Present, no other declarations.
Thank you. Councillor Karimi Guven-Liu.
Present and no further declarations.
Councillor Lawn.
Present and no further declarations.
Councillor Leggett.
Present and no further declarations.
Councillor Prutton.
Present and no further declarations.
Councillor Riley.
Present and no declarations, Chair. Thank you.
And Councillor Ward.
Present, no further declarations.
Thank you. That concludes those two items, Chairman.
Thank you, Officer Matthews. Also present with me today are Officers Nigel Harris, East Area Team Manager for Broadland and South Norfolk District Councils, and Ben Burgess, Central Area Team Manager for Broadland and South Norfolk, and he will be our presenting officer today. Lee Arthurton from Democratic Services, who will be our host for today, and Dawn Matthews from Democratic Services, who will take and prepare the minutes of our meeting. Thank you. And I will just advise that we have had apologies from Officer Tracy Lincoln. She's not able to attend, and Officer Helen Mathers is unable to attend with us today. All members of the committee have received in advance paper copies of the agenda, presentation slides, and public written submission for the application we will be considering today. At various points throughout the meeting, for example, in relation to questions and comments, I will do a roll call member to member if necessary in alphabetical order, requesting the committee's input for any discussion that we would have. Today, I'm pleased to confirm we will have public speaking for this planning meeting. Only members of the public who have registered to speak in accordance with the Council scheme of public speaking will be able to address this committee. The time allocated is a maximum of 5 minutes per speaker per parish council. Please be aware there is no provision for members of the public to circulate documents or photographs at this meeting. The order of our meeting today will be as follows. The planning officer will present the key points for the applications to the committee for their consideration. This will be followed by questions to the presenting officer from members of the committee, for members of the committee in relation to the presentation. Public speakers will then be invited to address the committee. This again will be followed by questions to the public speakers from members of the committee. And I must emphasize these questions will only be to clarify something the speaker has said and not for the speakers to put further points across. The order of public speaking will be parish town council first, followed by objectors and finally supporters, i.e. the applicant or agent. Council members who are not members of this committee will then be invited to speak for the allocated time of a maximum of 5 minutes each speaker. This again will be followed by questions from members of the committee. Thank you. Do I have any questions before we proceed? No, thank you. We will move on to our agenda, and at this point of our virtual meeting, I would like to bring forward agenda item number 3 and number 4. And if I could pass that over to Officer Matthews again. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. May I just deal with just item 2, the apologies for absence from members?
Apologies, yes.
We've got apologies from Councillor Brennan and Councillor Moncur, and Councillors Copplestone and Councillor Leggett are here with us today as their substitutes. Moving on to items 3 and 4, if I do a roll call and take those 2 items together, so as I call your name, if you could indicate if you are happy with the accuracy of the minutes of the last meeting and indicate if you wish to raise any matters arising. So that's Councillor Adams.
Quite happy with the minutes, no matters arising.
Councillor Beadle.
Content with the minutes and no matters arising.
Councillor Copplestone.
I wasn't present at that meeting, so I can't confirm. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Fisher.
No problem with anything. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fulcher.
Not present at the previous meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Creamy-Givenloo.
I'm happy with the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lawn.
Happy with minutes and no matters arising.
Thank you. Councillor Leggett.
Not present at the previous meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Prutton.
Happy with everything, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Riley.
Happy with minutes. Thank you.
And Councillor Ward.
Happy with the minutes, no matters arising.
Thank you, Chairman. That concludes those 2 items.
Okay, thank you. And that now takes us on to agenda item number 5, and that will be our schedule of applications. And our first application this morning is application number 2020-1949, and it's Mcdonald's restaurant at Poswick. Leah, can you just please confirm that we have our public speaker for this application in attendance, Mr. Paul Thomas?
Yes, he's in attendance.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and this presentation will be presented by Officer Burgess, and I just need to advise you that our officer will be sharing the screen throughout the presentation. Members will also have this presentation information via hard copies. Committee members, please ensure that you do not leave your screen at any time during the presentation, public speaking, or discussion of an application. If you should need to leave for any reason, please give the reason for leaving to the host through the chat, and you will need to understand that you could then be in a situation where you are unable to vote on the application under discussion at the time of your absence. Please be advised if a member should lose connection for a period of time, the meeting will be adjourned until the member reconnects. Please note a member will be given a period of 5 minutes to reconnect, and if they're unable to resume, we will then move on, and if they should join us at a later date, they wouldn't be able to vote on the application we are considering at the time of losing connection. Members, can I advise you that on conclusion of the presentation, I will ask through roll call if necessary, if you have any questions in relation to this presentation. Could I please request, if you should have any further questions or comments after I've asked you in a roll call, would you please address these questions through chat, and our host Lee will bring it to my attention. We will now proceed to the presentation. Thank you, Officer Burgess.
Excellent. Thank you, Chair. Morning, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen now. Can someone just confirm they can see it, please?
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Right, so I'm just going to take you through a few slides. This application is land at Broadland Gate to the east of Broadland Way and to the north of the A47. The application is for the erection of a freestanding restaurant with a drive-through facility, car parking, landscaping and associated works, including customer order displays, goalpost height restrictor and play frames, and specifically it's for a Mcdonald's drive-through restaurant. So we're going to first look at the site location and a wider perspective, and then we're going to zoom in a bit. This just shows the site within the context of the Broadland Gate scheme, which is within this area here. To the east of the scheme is the Broadland North Way, running to the north. To the north of the site is the new road called Poppy Way, and then beyond that to the west is the Broadland Business Park as existing, into Dussindale and then onto Thorpe with the A47 running to the south. This is the site, looking at it in closer detail, and you'll see that's the Poppy Way that I talked about before. To the east is Broadland North Way, and then this road here is the access road for the business park development. This area in here is a residential complex of barns. Just wanted to put that then in context of the Growth Triangle Area Action Plan in terms of allocations. You'll see the site there in red. This is GT10, which has an allocation and a permission for a mixed-use employment-led development. To the north, GT11 and GT21 are residential-led schemes. GT11 almost has permission for around about 500 dwellings. The northern part of GT11 has permission in outline for 300 dwellings. And then we have the expansion to the business park and 600 homes, which we call Brook Farm, that both have outline permission as well. And then I thought this was a useful slide because members will have seen a number of applications come before them in sort of the last 12 months for developments on this site, but also others that we've approved through delegated powers as they aren't contrary to the development plan. I just thought I'd talk you through them now. This is the site here that we're talking about today, the Mcdonald site, and I'm going to go round clockwise. This plot 5A, actually, I don't know what's going on there yet, but it's been exchanged. Plot 5B, that's the trade counter that if members have driven along the Broadland Northway recently, they will have seen. Plot 7 is the electric vehicle charging station, that's GridServe that came before members late last year. Then we have the Jaguar Land Rover garage that's had permission for some time now. To the north of the access road, we have the police base, which we saw again a few months ago. This site here is for an engineering company called Pinnacle. They've got their new offices on there. Whilst it's not actually on this plan yet, half of plot 11, I've had initial discussions about something coming on there. And just within the last week on half of plot 1, we've had an application in for a 66-bed care home, a C2 use, which again is in line with the original outline permission. And then finally, one that we did see very recently, which was approved by the committee, which was for a new Lidl, which they're expecting to build relatively soon. This just shows you the red line site, just out of necessity. And then there's a few photographs here that gives a bit of a perspective on where we are in the site. So what we've got is, this is a view looking into the site from the access road. So Poppy Way is to the north here. This is the access road into the development. This is those residential properties I talked about before. In front of us here would be the Lidl with the proposed McDonald's behind. This then is looking from the north. This is Poppy Way. This is the access road into the development, the residential properties within here, the Lidl in this sort of area, and then the McDonald's here, albeit set well back within the development. And then this is a view looking southwest across the site from Poppy Way again, so give you a perspective of those residential dwellings. That's the access road roughly in there, and we'd expect to see the building in this sort of location. So just run you through the layout of the scheme and the elevations. We'll move on past this one because that just gives it the wider context, but this is a good one to see how it's going to be laid out. And you see it's accessed off this roundabout. with the access road running in through the car parking area. Just as note, this area here, these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parking spaces are actually for staff, and then these 2 spaces here are electric vehicle charging spaces. Anyway, we follow it around, and then this sort of more mottled area is the entrance to the drive-through. This is the pickup point. These are a couple of waiting bays, and then people using it can either go back into the car park or they can go on with their journey. This is the landscaping plan, just trying to create a frontage to Poppy Way. The Lidl scheme actually has a strong boundary here in terms of the landscaping, which we're just considering in detail now, and again trying to create a boundary on this side for the new development as and when that may come through. This just gives you an idea of the building, but I think the best thing to do really is to move on pretty quickly to the visuals, because it's a reasonably standard but a modern design for one of the new McDonald's that they have. You'll see, albeit it's raised in height to approximately 8 meters, it's still single story. And then that just gives you an idea. There's 2 of the waiting bays that I talked about before. This just shows you the floor plans, and again, reasonably standard design with the dining area, the queue for the service area here, and these are the windows where the food is delivered from the kitchens, and then it's got toilets, etc., staff rooms, those sorts of things. Again, just to give you the complete picture, this is the roof plan with the plant equipment in here on the top. So I'm just going to leave with that slide up, and I'm going to take you on to the assessment of the scheme. Not in too much detail, because we'll leave that for the discussion. But what I wanted to say was that the key considerations are detailed on pages 17 to 24 of the agenda, but I wanted to draw members' attention to 3 particular aspects. Now, as I've shown in the presentation, the site sits within the envelope of the Broadland Gate development, and this benefits from being allocated for an extension to Broadland Business Park through policy GT10 of the Growth Triangle Area Action Plan. Furthermore, the wider site benefits from outline approval for the same, in which it specifies a certain quantum of acceptable uses. Now, in this instance, what is being proposed, though, is actually contrary to both the allocation and the outline planning permission. The reason for this is that whilst the outline planning permission does permit A3 restaurants, which is actually now grouped under Class E of the use classes order, the proposed scheme, by virtue of its drive-through, which is why I picked up on it before, and takeaway element, this renders it a sui generis use, which wasn't permitted through the outline permission. So section 38(6) of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act requires applications for planning permission to be determined in accordance with the development plan, unless material considerations indicate otherwise. Now, in favour of this application is that the location is highly accessible for the use proposed, and the scheme is complementary to the strategic objectives of the business park and the nearby residential developments. And so consequently, officers consider that the harm associated with the conflict with the development plan is got very little weight, actually. So furthermore, one of the key ambitions of a strategic employment site such as this is job creation. Now, this development would generate the equivalent of around about 65 full-time posts, and this weighs well in favour of the development. In addition, the scheme has passed a sequential test, ensuring that it does not adversely impact upon existing centres, and this is in accordance with the MPPF and policy 19 of the Joint Core Strategy. So overall, in officers' opinion, it's considered that there are material considerations, at play which warrant approving this application, albeit contrary to the provisions of the development plan. So there's just 2 more things to look at. The next one is the impact on residential amenity. Obviously, I picked up on those residential properties to the south and also to the north, the newly or almost approved residential properties. They need to be considered, the impact on them needs to be considered. And so in support of the application, an odour assessment and a noise assessment have been submitted, which have regard to both existing residents and the future residents. And notably, these have been reviewed by the environmental quality team, and they raised no objections to the scheme. Now, a resident and the parish council has raised concerns about noise and light nuisance, as well as antisocial behaviour associated with loitering and littering around this proposal. But the site is not directly adjacent to existing residents and is located on a business park with an extant permission for a range of uses that would result in lighting, noise and traffic, as we've seen from those that I've pointed to earlier on. And furthermore, the Environmental Contracts Officer has advised that Mcdonald's provide bins for customers to use, and locally they implement a scheme of litter picking, and this has gone into some detail in their submission. And so finally, in terms of the assessment, looking at the building design, the schemes for a building of a scale and layout designed with sufficient regard to the operational requirements of the business, and the design of the store reflects the corporate image and surrounding urban form. However, other design considerations have also influenced the building, with materials designed to complement the local built form. These materials include a combination of mixed timber effect, contemporary grey block and stone effect panels, as we saw, and all of these provide durability and future flexibility, but with natural and neutral colours. So given the location of the building on the business park and the form and function of which will be varied, it's considered by officers that the proposal is acceptable in design terms. Now, just before moving on to the recommendation, I wanted to point members towards the supplementary schedule, because since the report to committee was written, a letter of objection has been submitted and is shown in full on page 39 and 40 of the agenda in the supplementary schedule. However, I consider that all of the planning issues raised have either been covered by this presentation or by the officer's report. So given that, and given the presentation, and as per page 25 of the agenda, the committee is recommended to approve this application subject to conditions highlighted on the same page. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, members, do you have any questions for the officer in relation to the presentation that we've just had? Councillor Copplestone, if you just unmute yourself, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered, I only got the papers last night and I had a good read, but I couldn't quite see, is there any sort of outside dining area for customers? I'm just thinking of the COVID situation. Obviously the drive-through will probably, you know, make people feel a bit safer not eating indoors, but is there an outside dining area, please, Ben?
So there's a small area to the front of the development, yeah. Which if you want, I can show you on a plan if that would be helpful.
Yes, please.
Yeah, sure. I'll just share it now. So this area in here is a small area of seating, and there's also a small sort of bit of play equipment in there as well. I think probably the photograph shows it quite well, because it's again a very similar design, albeit the seating would be to the frontage on the one we're looking at, and it's this sort of seating that they have.
Okay, thank you. I hope that answers your question, Councillor Copplestone. Councillor Karimi Guvanlu.
You didn't mention about the Historic Environment Officer's comments on here about an archaeological site. Will that be fully investigated before any building is going ahead?
Yeah, apologies. I was trying to pick up some of the key points, but I was always a danger of missing some. Yes, there is going to be a proposed condition to ensure that that's considered properly. There's been a site-wide investigation required for this, and it will be looked at properly by the Historic Environment team.
Okay,
And
thank you.
that's condition number 5, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, sorry, I don't have everybody on my screen. Is there anyone else, Leah, who needs to ask?
Councillor Fisher has a question.
Councillor Fisher?
Thank you, Chairman. Just a question to the officer, really. In the past, Thorpe St Andrew Town Council has been consulted on applications for the business park, but we appear to be missed out on this particular application. And I just want to buy, but B, I'd like to flag up that would like to still, or the Town Council would still like to be one of the consultees on applications on the business park, because we believe, and the issue we have said in the past is effectively it is the entrance to Thorpe St Andrew, and we are concerned about what in fact determines on the business park in that aspect. Thank you.
Yes, certainly, Councillor Fisher, and apologies for that, because every other scheme so far that we've had, we've made sure you've been consulted. So this must have been an oversight. And again, I can only apologise for that, and certainly going forward, we will ensure that you are.
Okay, thank you. And Leah, is there anything else, anyone else waiting? No? Okay, that's lovely. Thank you. We will now move on to our public speaking, and we don't have any representations from the parish council, nor do we have residents who wish to attend this meeting to voice their objections to the application. However, we do have in attendance an agent for the application. And Officer Atherton, if you could please unmute Mr. Paul Thomas. Okay, thank you. Let me just move my screen. Hi, Paul, sorry. Good morning to you and thank you for joining us this morning. I just need to advise you that you will have 5 minutes to address the committee. Unfortunately, we don't have a clock that we can share on the screen with you, as that would block you from the members of the committee. However, the host will advise you when you have 1 minute remaining. Is that acceptable to you?
Absolutely fine. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. If you could please introduce yourself, and you will have 5 minutes starting from now.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Paul Thomas. I'm the senior.
Paul, is there any way you could just make yourself a little bit louder?
Yeah, of course. Hold on a second. Sorry. Does that work any better?
That's much better. Thank you.
Sorry. So good morning, everyone. My name is Paul Thomas and I'm a Senior Acquisitions Manager for McDonald's Restaurants. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to address you today to support the application. We've worked closely with the planning officer throughout the application process and we're pleased with the recommendation to approve the proposal. I want to use this opportunity to add some detail to the report before you and to tell you about McDonald's. Given the current national situation, the proposed economic stimulus that this proposal will bring to the local area cannot be downplayed. Our latest employment study in 2017 found that across the east of England alone, McDonald's contributed £341 million to the economy and supported 15,900 jobs. The proposal seeks to provide a complementary use to the wider development of Broadland Gate in a sustainable location adjacent to the strategic road network. We want to take this opportunity to reiterate our commitment to invest in the local area for the long term, creating at least 65 jobs for local people. We would hope to start on site as soon as possible. As a company, McDonald's invests over £43 million a year in staff training. All of our employees have access to a range of qualifications to help them develop, including nationally recognised foundation degrees and apprenticeships. The majority of our managers started serving in our restaurants, as did many of our most senior staff. The restaurant will be locally franchised, which will inherently provide additional benefits to the local area. Our teams in Norwich and more locally Broadlands have previously given up their spare time to litter pick in their local area as part of the national Great British Spring Clean, which is run by Keep Britain Tidy. They also hold fundraising events to raise money for Ronald McDonald House charities, who provide home away from home accommodation for families being treated at specialist hospitals across the UK. I'm pleased to say that McDonald's has a proud history in helping local communities to tackle waste. And we have invested heavily in recent years in introducing recycling bins across all of our restaurants, displaying clear instructions as to how to responsibly dispose of and recycle waste. Last year, we launched a new litter campaign called Get in the Bin that encourages customers to take personal responsibility for disposing of their litter and keeping their communities clean. In addition, all of our restaurants, including those locally, undertake daily litter patrols at least 3 times a day. In fact, it is estimated that our people across the UK walk almost 4,000 miles a week completing litter patrols and organising larger clean-up events, collecting other rubbish as well as our own. We've worked hard with officers during the course of the application to ensure the proposal before you is in an acceptable form, including greatly enhancing the landscaping scheme on offer. There are many benefits that the proposed scheme will bring, and we're excited to invest in the local area in the long term, providing significant economic investment, which will provide a range of benefits to the local community. We're pleased with the officer's recommendation and we trust you can support this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And members, do you have any questions for our public speaker, please?
Councillor Copperstone has her hand raised.
Councillor Copperstone.
Thank you. You just mentioned benefits for the local economy. What sort of benefits are we talking about? Is this some sort of community work or grant aid? Can you just expand on that, please, Paul? Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Generally, the investment into the local area, including the jobs, franchisees across our organisation also like to be involved within the local community. It's They are part of the community. More often than not, the franchisees are local and want to be a part of initiatives that create that community.
Okay. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. And Councillor Kwame Govan-Lu.
And we have Councillor Riley as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, what are the opening hours of McDonald's? And I don't actually go there myself, so I just wondered what the opening hours were.
So 24/7 generally is
24/7.
the McDonald's approach.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, similar in similar vein to Councillor Joe Coppiston, really. I understand the corporate body does have local initiatives to engage locally, and is the franchisor in this case living within Broadland as well?
I don't know that we can. That's part of the planning issue at the moment.
No, Chair. Can I just clarify my point? The point is that the applicants made that. It's not material, but the applicants made that point that there's benefits to the local economy and made references to the franchisee. Exactly in line with what Joe just asked. So I'm just asking, do they live within Broadland? It's a simple question, that's all.
Yeah, and so it's a yes or no, if he is happy to answer that.
Yeah.
I don't think that's something we can answer at this stage.
Okay, fine.
Okay, lovely. Okay, well, thank you very much for your time. It's very much appreciated. Members, we will now go to open discussion in relation to this application. You will remain unmuted as a committee. Please, can I ask if you'd like to comment or ask a question to the officer, please register your request to do so in the chat, and I'll come to you in turn. And between Lee and myself, we will get to you. After this discussion, the committee will then determine the decision of the application on the proposal and seconding for the application. If necessary, during this discussion, we will have Officer Burgess and Officer Harris, who will be able to advise if you should have any issues that they need to address for you. And if we could just, is there anybody who wants to open the discussion, please? Councillor Adams.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. We have a McDonald's in Helston, just off the Boundary Road, and that has been no problem whatsoever. Initially, there were problems, especially with litter, but as Paul pointed out, they did appoint somebody to go around and pick up the litter, which has been very successful because you don't see litter along the Boundary Road. It is opposite a housing development we're in the city, and never had any complaints from the city council or individual residents about the McDonald's there. And Madam Chairman, I'm quite happy to move the recommendation.
Second that, Madam Chairman.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else? Because I just need to ask a question or...
Can I?
And yes, Councillor Ward?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I very much welcome this development. I think it's an attractive building. I think it's a big business park. It needs facilities like this so that people can get some food, hot food, when they need it. I also think it does need to be 24/7. We've got the police hub there, which will have a lot of police working 24/7, and a lot of those other businesses are probably working 24/7. The point has been made that there is another McDonald's 5 minutes away. That is 5 minutes by car, and we don't want all these people on this business park jumping in their cars to drive up there for 5 minutes. So it's very handy that they'll be able to actually walk to this McDonald's. So I do support the application.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And if I could just ask a question, Ben, please. My question is in relation to the opening hours. Now, I don't necessarily agree with Councillor Ward. I don't feel that it should be a 24-hour opening. I don't think that we need to have 24 hours until the business park is fully up and running. Is there any way that we, or if the committee is in agreement, that we could ask for it to be midnight closing for the first year and reconsider the situation in 9 months' time? Would that be a possibility at all?
So I suppose I'll just say something else first, and then come on to answer that question. One of the benefits of the scheme that Paul's raised and that sort of the officer raised in the report is the creation of the jobs. And if we were to limit the opening hours, then those jobs, I assume, Paul can perhaps explain this to us, I assume would be less, because there wouldn't be the need for have those people working throughout the night. So some of those benefits of it being in a key employment area to the local area would be lost. Now, to answer this question specifically, yes, of course, it's within the gift of the planning authority to limit the hours of the operation of the scheme, but we have to do so on the basis of that being reasoned, and that reason perhaps we can give because I think you've expressed it already, but we have to be aware as well, just to be, so we've got the full picture, that if we were to put a condition on, then that condition could be appealed as well by the applicant if they didn't consider it to be appropriate. So yes, it's the simple answer, we could do, but we'd have to come up with a good reason to do so that would then be sufficient to ensure that it wasn't open to challenge appeal.
Okay, so I guess my reasoning would then need to go to the proposer and the seconder to see if they would accept that as a condition on there. And we can deal with that in just a second. Councillor Leggett.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to come back on that point, I thought I understood Paul to say that there were already businesses there that were working 24 hours. But did I misunderstand that, please? Or if the officer could just clarify.
Yes, certainly. So there's no businesses yet on Broadland Gate Business Park. So in this location, there aren't any. However, and as has been raised by councillors, there would be facilities or offices on here. The police probably is the best example of it, that would be operating 24/7, because obviously they're having to go out to calls at all times. And I would expect somewhere like, well, no, I don't expect, I know the GridServe electric vehicle charging station, that would be 24/7 as well. So yes, there would be some on the business park, on this part of it, that would be 24/7.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else got any further comments?
Yes, me, Chair.
Councillor Riley.
Thank you. Yeah, the application as it stands and the opening hours are as they are, and I think that, you know, as Ben said, that would be subject to appeal. Therefore, you need to have some pretty strong material reasons under planning and under local policies to sustain that. I don't believe they exist. I understand your point, Chair, but I don't believe they exist. Therefore, also, I think it inhibits the whole purpose of it for a year, and I'm not quite sure I'd want to support that in terms of the business model and the numbers employed as well. So I wouldn't personally be, if that was accepted by the proposer and seconded to come to a vote, I personally would then be voting against.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Coppleston.
Thank you, Chair. Just thinking about your comments on limiting 24/7 opening in the first sort of year or so, I think we need to consider where the harm would be, because at the moment GT 11 for 500 dwellings hasn't been, you know, there is no housing there. There is very little there at the moment, so I can't see where the harm would be, because this site is a considerable way from sort of any residential properties. So I would probably go with the original recommendation. Thank you.
If I can just clarify, my reasoning for the first year is because there is nothing there at the moment. And I would imagine that maybe the applicant will start to build as soon as possible. So the majority of their customers will be people who will have to travel. And I'm concerned that for those neighbours that there will be late into the early hours of the morning excess noise through the cars. And again, normally this type of restaurant does attract younger people. So until my only reasoning was until the business park gets itself up and fully running, and there is 24/7 businesses there, then I just feel that it would be out of the area that would be attracting their customers, as opposed to, but I'm happy to go with whatever the committee is saying, but that's just my reasoning for asking. Thank you. Officer Harris.
Thanks, Chairman. I just wanted to add as well, I think from the point of view of the application has been subject to a noise assessment, and that noise assessment will have factored in the approved adjacent land uses, so particularly taking into account the residential approval on the land opposite to the north. The other point I would make is obviously the strategic location of this is such that it's bound to the north and to the east by principal road networks that will be used 24/7 as well. And I think that degree of separation of this facility, particularly to the residential development to the north, with what's in effect a dual carriageway in between in terms of that road infrastructure, that has been assessed through the noise assessment and concluded that we don't have reasonable grounds. I don't consider in terms of residential amenity that we could justify a hours of operation restriction. I just wanted to add that, and whether Ben had anything to add to that as well.
No, that's absolutely fine, Officer Harris. I accept that. I accept your points now. That's fine. Do you have anything, Ben, that you want to say?
No, I think that's been covered both through what Nigel said and in the presentation before.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Beadle?
Thank you, Chair. It was a similar point, actually, because if we can justify delaying the 24/7 opening, then we really could justify not having 24/7 opening permanently. But I'm pleased that you're withdrawing your suggestion. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and am I missing anyone, Leah? No?
Not that I can see of, no.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so if there's no further discussion, we will go to the vote. It's been proposed by Councillor Adams and seconded by Councillor Ward that we as a committee should agree to the officer's recommendation to approve this application subject to conditions as set out on page 25 of your papers. Officer Matthews, could you please proceed to the roll call? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So if I call your names in alphabetical order, if you could indicate if you are for or against the recommendation for approval. Councillor Adams?
For.
Councillor Beadle?
For.
Councillor Copplestone?
For.
Councillor Fisher?
For.
Councillor Fulcher?
For.
Councillor Karimi Guvenlou?
For.
Councillor Lawn?
For.
Councillor Leggett?
For.
Councillor Prutton?
For.
Councillor Riley?
For.
And Councillor Ward?
For.
Chairman, that's unanimous. That recommendation is supported.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you very much for your time. Okay, and if everyone's in agreement, we will move on to our second application this morning, and it's application 2020-1976 and Sunny Acres, Yarmouth Road, Blowfield. And Leah, could you please confirm that we have our public speakers in attendance this morning? I have Anna Randlesome, John Randlesome and David Jones.
Yes, they are all in.
Okay, thank you for joining us this morning. And if we could ask Officer Burgess, please, to proceed to the presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Share the screen again. There we go. So this is an application at Sunny Acres, Yarmouth Road, Blowfield, and the application is for the subdivision of a plot and the erection of a two-storey dwelling with attached 1.5-storey double garage. Now, this application is presented before committee because it's been called in by Councillor Nigel Brennan, as he considers that the proposed design and self-build construction of the dwelling is of an exceptional quality and they would use decentralised and renewable low-carbon energy sources, sustainable construction technologies, sustainable construction technologies and rainwater harvesting to minimise the impact on the environment. Yet the officers are recommending that the application be refused. So we'll just go through a few slides here just to show us where we are, and then I'll give you a few points on the assessment before we get into the discussion. So this plan just shows us the red line of the site and puts us in. So the red line, sorry, is where the application site is. This is the existing Sunny Acres property with the associated outbuildings, and the sort of yellowy orange area is the curtilage of that property. And you'll see that the site is accessed by a private drive, which we've got some photographs and aerial views of later. And obviously the A47 is to the south there. So just to put the site in the context of its wider perspective, the site is in here, in this sort of P-shaped area, and you'll see the A47 running to the south of it, and then the main sort of village of Blowfield to the south there. And then this shows us the site in here in relation not only to Blowfield and the A47, but to Blowfield Heath, and obviously access via a few country lanes and back roads there. Then just wanted to put the site in its context in terms of the local plan, because that's a key matter we'll be picking up later in the assessment. The site is in here, as I said, to the north of the A47. The red line area around both Blowfield and Brundle signifies the built settlement limit of the development, and then the blue and the green areas of the locations in the development management DPD, that's the development plan document, sorry, in which we would be looking to provide new development. And the reason for showing this is to show that that area is reasonably condensed and it's all to the south of the A47. And then just to give you a bit more detail from the aerial photos that I alluded to before, you'll see the site is in here. Currently, it accesses onto the A47, both western this way and eastern this way, through this private drive that it has that then joins onto High Noon Lane going to the north. So you can see you can access it onto here and access it onto there to go west. Of relevance is that there's a development consent order been submitted very late last year, right at the end of last year, for the dualling of the A47 in this location. And the reason for showing this is because the site in this little red dot here sits to the north of that still. And what's going to happen is the existing single carriageway A47 is going to be detrunked and it's going to be built offline, the new dualling, which follows this line. And so the applicant, if they were to be living in this property in the existing residence, would now be able to access the A47 going east via this route here on the detrunked A47, and they gain access over in this location here. And then in more detail, to access going west, they would leave the site in this location, go over the new bridge, come back and then join going west. And I said that's a new bridge that goes over to then also access Blowfield. This is the site then, just going to talk you through the footprint and the layout of the scheme, as well as some elevations and some photographs. So you'll see this is the existing property, the residential property in here. These are the outbuildings, and this is the property to the northwest. It's accessed from the south here. This is the footprint, this is the ground floor plan, and you'll see that all the living area is to the ground floor, and then there's a large attached garage as well, with a staircase, external staircase, which accesses at first floor level this area, which is on the plans as a crafting room or storage above the garage. And you'll see there's 4 bedrooms with 3 bathrooms upstairs. And then looking at some elevations, this is the proposed elevation looking to the south, looking towards the A47. That's that external staircase I talked of. You'll see the solar panels being provided on all of the various roof planes. This is the east elevation, the one looking towards the existing residential property, and obviously this is the main entrance into the property. This is the west elevation and the north elevation, both of which look out onto open countryside. And you'll see it's a 2-story property, reasonably large in height. And then this slide leads us on to 2 or 3 more slides after this, because what we're going to look at is viewpoints. We've got viewpoints A, B, C, D, and E, all of which are then shown on the photographs on these next couple of slides. So this is viewpoint A, and that's looking northeast from the southwestern corner of the site. And we start to pick up what the residential property and its outbuildings, that's what this is here, looks like. We then look southeast from the northwestern corner of the site. And this is a good one because that shows us what the existing residential property is like. And we'd expect to see the new residential property in this sort of location here. You'll see on this next slide, this next photograph, the view looking south from the northern boundary of the site. So we expect to see the property in front of us here. That's the boundary to the A47 down beyond. And then this is us looking at viewpoint D, and we're looking southwest from the northeastern corner of the site. Again, that's the line of the A47 down there. Expect to see the building in this sort of location in front of us. And this is the view view E, looking northwest from the southeastern corner of the site, and those are those outbuildings I talked about in the existing property. And it's a useful slide to look at that existing private access that they have on into the property. That's the existing property, and then in this sort of area is the proposed residential property. Similarly, this shows us again more of the context. That's the access road I talked about. That's the existing property, and then we'd expect to see the property in this sort of location. This hedge represents the boundary of the property. And again, just to show that sort of open countryside feel to the north, there's the existing property. You can sort of see the boundary of the property, and we'd expect to see the property in there. That's that tree line to the A47, and notably this is High Noon Lane, which runs adjacent to the site. I thought it was worth picking up this slide as well, just to give us a bit of context of similar schemes in the area that have been through, had refusals on them, and also have been upheld at appeal, as in they've been dismissed by the inspector. So the first one, number 1 there, that was an appeal dismissed sort of in 2019. And the principle of that one was considered to be unacceptable by the inspector because of the unsustainable location of it in relation to services either in Blowfield Heath or within Blowfield. Number 2, that was refused. That was actually for 5 dwellings, but that was refused on the impact on the harm and the character and the appearance of the area, i.e. it's in that sort of countryside location. And then number 3, getting closest to the application site, albeit to the south of the A47. That was dismissed as appeal following a refusal by the council, and that was dismissed on the harm to the character and appearance of the area, and so as well as the degree of harm to living conditions from the traffic noise of the A47. I'll touch on them as I move through the assessment of it now. So yeah, so moving on to that assessment, I think all the key considerations are detailed on pages 30 to 35 of the agenda, but I just want to draw members' attention to the 3 particular aspects because these form the basis of the officer's recommendation for refusal. There are actually now 4 reasons for refusal, but that will be explained as I work through this assessment now. So applications, so we're going to look at the principle of development first, and applications for planning permission must be determined in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. And this point is reinforced by the MPPF, which in itself is a material consideration. Now, the application site is situated outside the defined settlement limits of both Blowfield and Blowfield Heath, where policy GC2 of the Development Management Development Plan document seeks to accommodate new development. Policy GC2 does, however, go on to state that outside defined settlement limits, development which does not result in any significant adverse impact will be permitted where it accords with a specific allocation and/or policy of the development plan. Now, in this instance, the proposal doesn't accord with a specific policy or allocation of the development plan that allows for development outside of these development boundaries. And in addition, the council is able to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, and therefore its development plan policies are up to date. So the site is considered to be located in an isolated and unsustainable location by officers, and this is in respect of services and facilities available in Blowfield and Blowfield Heath, due to the distance to Blowfield Heath and in particular the crossing of the A47 to Blowfield. So in effect, the principle of development is considered unacceptable by officers. But adding to that is the second issue here, and that's that issue of amenity. The submitted plans show that bedrooms 3 and 4 within the proposed dwelling and the external staircase on the east end of the proposed garage would, to an extent, create a degree of overlooking of the existing dwelling, given the separation distance, and would have a poor relation to it. And just for reference, bedrooms 3 and 4 would be approximately 16 metres from the proposed boundary with the existing property, and the external staircase would be approximately 6 metres from the proposed boundary, and that's looking east. Further to this, it's important to consider the impact that noise arising from the A47 could have on the amenity of the future occupiers of the proposed dwelling. Though no noise impact assessment was originally provided with the application, but late last night a report was submitted but officers haven't had the chance to properly consider that or discuss it with environmental health colleagues. But reading the report, it appears that what's being proposed is that acoustic fencing, windows being closed, and mechanical ventilation is what is proposed to mitigate the noise of the A47. However, these measures can be argued to compromise amenity under policy GC4 of the Development Management DPD, and by that I mean having to close windows to allow satisfactory living conditions isn't really ideal. And as such, the potential for the impact of road noise on the amenity of the proposed dwellings contributes to the unsatisfactory nature of the proposal. And of note is that in the appeal decision number 3 that I referred to before, that's the one to the south of the A47, the inspector made this very point in his dismissal of the appeal. So moving on to the final point of the reasons for the refusal, that's character and appearance. But just point members to the supplementary schedule first on page 41 of the agenda, and this is a further reason for refusal that's been added. Actually, this was mistakenly missed from the report's recommendation, so it was always going to be a reason for refusal. It just wasn't put in as one of them, so apologies for that. But to summarise, policies within the Development Management Development Plan document and the Blowfield Neighbourhood Plan require that new development should be small scale and should respect the character, height and massing of the surrounding properties. That regard should be given to the density, footprint and separation of buildings in the locality, and wherever possible, development should deliver enhancements to the landscape character. Now, in relation to this application, it's considered that the proposal would be contrary to these policies, as it would be harmful to the character and visual appearance of the area by virtue of its massing and appearance, and represents an unacceptable consolidation of existing sporadic development in the countryside in officers' opinion. So just one final thing before I move on to the recommendation. Further to the above, a response from Highways England is still awaited in relation to highway safety, given the proximity to the proposal of the A47. Should they raise an objection, then the wording set out in refusal reason 3 on page 36 of the agenda will be amended accordingly. If not, then it will be removed. But for members' information, Highways England have come back on one point, but it's not on highway safety, and they've raised no objection to the scheme in relation to its impact on the dualling of the A47. But just to reiterate, they've not come back to us on the impact on highway safety yet. So moving on to the recommendation, and as per page 36 of the agenda, the committee is recommended to refuse this application, subject to the reasons stated, plus the addition of the extra refusal reason on page 41 of the supplementary schedule. Thank you, Chair. Chair.
Chairman, you're on mute.
I'm so sorry. Okay, members, do you have any questions for the officer in relation to that presentation? Councillor Copplestone, Councillor Walsh.
Thank you very much, Chair. Oh, sorry, my phone is ringing. It was to do with the outbuildings at the rear of the existing property. Do they have any commercial use? And if this was to go ahead, could commercial use on the whole site be restricted? And in addition, I have looked at the sill form because I didn't quite understand what the square footage of the proposed property would be. But working it out from the sill form, I think it's 435 metres squared, which I understand is about 4,500 square feet, which is quite a large dwelling by anyone's standards. So could you just answer the, sorry about my phone. Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, no problem at all. The yeah, so to go to the last question, I suppose, first in a backwards order. Yeah, that's my understanding of the size of it as well from the SIL form. That's where I've taken it from. Apologies, that should have been included in the report really. But yeah, that's how I understand it. Certainly, we could, if needed, we could put a restriction on a commercial nature, but by the very virtue of it were to be approved, I suppose, of it being residential and that being specific in the description, then that should cover it. However, yes, we could add a condition if needed. And from what I understand, although Nigel might want to just jump in here, I don't think there's a commercial business there, is there?
I don't know. As far as I'm aware from the talking with the case officer, those buildings are not used for commercial purposes.
But I wonder perhaps maybe during their presentation whether the applicants might want to pick up on that.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And Councillor Riley, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Ben, you referred to the noise issue and the placement of the dualling, the new dualling that will occur on the A47 as well. Could you just please put the map back up so I can just clearly see, not the drawing schematic, but the actual photograph that you had up before. I just want to see how that relates to the road. If you could find that photograph.
Did you want the photographs or the
bird's eye view of the photograph of the road and the housing?
I think that one.
Yes. So could I just ask you this question? I'm looking at the distance between the proposed sites, the road, and the new A47, and the concerns that you're saying have been raised in terms of noise, etc. The housing, when you go, it's not on this map here. When you go further to the left, you can see some housing already established here. When you look at the Western Access name tag. Sorry, go back to go back to the previous photograph. It's fine. Thanks, Ben. When you look at the name tag Western Access to A47, come down to the left slightly, you can see those housing there, and there's more housing off the picture which you don't need to go to. That actually is the same distance or closer. So when they put in the proposals for dualling, what mitigation was put in to screen those existing housing from the noise issues that you've referred, or was there any mitigation put in for that reason?
So in terms of that, I'd have to have a look at the development consent order. Apologies, I don't know what that is at the moment. My expectation would there would be acoustic fencing in that location, but I would have to double check on that to confirm.
Okay, but it wasn't significant enough to prevent the dualling of the A47 past housing.
I suppose that's I suppose I have to give a slightly different answer to that. At the moment, the development consent order has been submitted for the dualling of the A47. It hasn't been approved yet, and so that will have to go through a series of considerations. It'll have to go through an examination in the public to look at it, and then that will be picked up as one of the key aspects to look at as part of that dualling. So, as I said, it will be in the submission, but it may well be that the inspector that looks at it decides that what's being proposed isn't sufficient, isn't acceptable, but we don't know yet until that's gone through that process.
Okay, final point on this then. So if that isn't acceptable, then the same issue would exist for any permission. If we was to give permission for this, it would simply exist for that as well. If we were to give permission, and it comes in the same category, the existing housing that's adjacent to it and the housing just south of it, then wouldn't it? That would be the position. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ward?
Yes, thank you. Ben, the 3 appeals that were dismissed that you mentioned, were they within the residential curtilage of existing properties, please?
My understanding of it is that no, they weren't.
So I don't really see how they're relevant to use those in this case as an example.
I think Nigel wants to come back on that.
Thanks, Chair. Just pick up on a couple of points. One from Councillor Riley. Ben, I don't know if you can just go back to the slide that showed the aerial view, and then I'll come on to Councillor Ward's comments as well.
That one?
Councillor Riley, you're referring to the existing development to the south of the A47, where Ben is now highlighting. Effectively, the start of the works to the A47 dualling process will take into account that central crossover junction, because that's going to be closed, and then the works will progress eastward. There will be some works on that westbound southern carriageway in terms of creating I think, some extra road width to create an on-slip into westbound on the A47. The development consent order does highlight that new acoustic barriers have to be placed to the rear of those properties, so on their northern boundary, or what will be the southern boundary of the existing A47. But obviously the DCO will only relate to any mitigation works in relation to existing dwellings. It won't take into account proposed dwellings. Proposed dwellings will need to provide their own sound attenuation, as has been referred to today in relation to the application site. A noise report has been submitted. One wasn't requested in terms of the submission of the application because from an officer's perspective, it was unacceptable in principle. And in that scenario, we don't necessarily then require further documents and work to be undertaken by an applicant if a scheme from the starting point is unacceptable in principle. But what the report has highlighted is that there would need to be some acoustic fencing, a minimum of 2 meters high and potentially up to 3 meters high, to give an acceptable residential environment in terms of amenity, both in the garden and to ground floor windows. And also that first floor windows should be non-opening with a form of mechanical ventilation, which I think the development in itself does propose anyway as part of its sort of energy efficiency credentials. And just to pick up on the point from Councillor Ward, Ben, I don't know if you can go to the slide that had the appeals on, please.
Yeah.
Councillor Ward was making the reference, are any of these within the curtilage of dwellings? Site 3 wasn't. Site 3 was in a treed area that formed a buffer between existing development and the A47. But by building within a treed area, the inspector felt it was out of character. And also, whilst the scheme could comply with minimum sound levels, it could only do that by virtue of incorporating measures which the inspector felt compromised the amenity of those proposed dwellings in terms of creating an acceptable new residential environment for occupiers. Site 2 is within the grounds of a residential property, historic grounds where the inspector felt it was out of character with that countryside location. Site 1, Perone's Farm, was actually within the curtilage of a dwelling. That was a proposal where the applicants wanted to downsize and provide a more accessible and adaptable accommodation, a new build dwelling within the curtilage, the residential curtilage in an existing dwelling. And the inspector felt that those personal circumstances were not overriding. He gave them limited weight. He also felt that that location, again, outside of a settlement limit and with the rural road network, was unsustainable, and that followed an officer's recommendation of refusal. So straight onto the question, at least 2 of those were within the curtilage of existing residential properties. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And Councillor Karimi Guvenlu.
Yeah, I'm slightly concerned about, well, the comments about noise. This property is set back quite away from the A47, considering other properties or developments which have been built along the A47 at Broadland, Cossey. Some of those new developments are right against the A47, so I can't see how we can object to noise. And also the email from Nikki Rowley from Highways England says there's no impact with regard to the dualling of the A47 with this property. I just wanted to highlight that, please.
Could I just come back on that,
Yes,
Chair?
of course.
Yeah, in terms of the email from Nikki Rowley is the project manager for the proposed DCO, the dualling of the A47, and Ben did clarify in relation to the proposed dualling, this scheme, the proposal before you today has no impact. What we are awaiting a response from Highways England is in relation to the existing A47 network as to whether, because the dwelling has two access points onto the A47, I don't consider when we do hear from them that they're going to raise an objection. If they do raise an objection, then they actually have to direct for a refusal. They will either come back with no objections or conditional no objections. But until we hear from them in relation to the highway safety of the existing trunk road network, that's the element that's outstanding. The comment we have had is in relation to the proposed dualling, which this current proposal before you today has no impact whatsoever. And that's what Nikki Rowley was confirming. In terms of noise, the way we've qualified it within the report is that I think on its own, if noise were the only consideration that you were determining this on today, there are measures which could make this development acceptable in terms of providing and reducing noise levels down to a level that would not unduly impact on residential amenity. What we're saying fundamentally here, the proposal is contrary to policy, but the fact that mitigation measures are also required in relation to reducing noise level, that also contributes to the unsatisfactory nature of the proposal. But if noise were the only issue, then I think it's fair to say that we wouldn't be recommending refusal, because there are measures available that you could condition that would allow you to create an acceptable noise level within the curtilage of the dwelling and the inside the dwelling as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Fulcher. You're still muted, Councillor Fulcher. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, my concern was basically with noise, because with the impending dualling of the of A47, there'll be a considerable amount of work being undertaken, and the resulting improvements could contribute significantly to noise, but clearly with the protracted program of works which is going on as far as the dualling of the A47 is concerned, this is likely to continue certainly into early 22, and also possibly a little bit longer than that, because the actual funding of this development was agreed way back about 5 years' time, and it has taken a long time for Highways England, etc., to get the route agreed and also the facility to start the works. I think clearly there is a concern about overall noise given that scenario.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to just remind everybody, we're just asking questions in relation to the presentation.
Yes.
We haven't got to the discussion as yet. We've still got public speaking. So Councillor Fisher, did you have I got you down, or is that from your past, from the past application? You don't want to speak? Councillor Fisher?
Apologies, that's from my past. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Leggett.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to just clarify a couple of points on amenity and unsustainable services. Would you prefer this in discussion, or can I clarify them now?
No, if it's something that could wait until after we've had the public speaking, then that would be great. The officers will still be able to take those for you, but it's just nothing that you need to ask them before we go to public speaking. If you feel that it is, Ken, then that's absolutely fine. You ask it.
Well, could I just ask Ben to go to the copies of the plans we had where it said proposed site? It was in the file. That's right, and proposed site.
Yeah, just go back to the start and then we'll go through that one. No,
that one. No, go on. No, go on. I think it's the next. That's the one. Now, the proposed site, is that the final and the firm? That is the outline of the proposed building, is it?
Yeah, that's what's been proposed through this application.
Right. Well, when you look at that, and then you look at the Sunny Sunny Acres. Now, I think you read, or I read somewhere, you said the viewing from going up those stairs would be 16 meters from Sunny Acres. And I'm sure you've seen the letter from John Randallson. I can't quite clear. Is that really 16 only 16 meters from the garage of the proposed site to the Sunny Acres? And he says this could only be viewed from proposed bedroom windows and external staircase. There are several trees and a laurel hedge planted in that vicinity, which when mature will alleviate this concern. Am I confused, or is that the perspective there, as you said?
So I'll just clarify that what I've said and what's in the report, sorry, just for clarity, is that the bedrooms 3 and 4, which are these 2 bedrooms,
yeah,
they would be approximately 16 meters from the boundary with the existing property. So looking
the boundary,
yes, this boundary, and then the staircase would be approximately 6 meters from the boundary.
So it's not 16 meters from Sunny Acres.
No, it's to the boundary.
Which is quite a long way, I would have thought there. But there, well, that probably will be explained later. Could you just help me on unsustainable services, which you referred to?
Yeah.
Because the existing premises, Sunny Acres, I assume they are adequately serviced, are they?
So what I mean by services is those facilities such as shops, schools, all those sorts of things that are within the village of Blowfield or in Blowfield Heath. And from a sustainable point of view, what I mean is how they access those. And accessing those from a new property, primarily to go to Blowfield Heath, you'd have to go by car. And to go to the south to Blowfield, primarily, again, you'd go by car, because otherwise you have to look to across the A47. And what we're saying is, yes, there is an existing property there that, of course, accesses those, but this is a new property. And this new property, then we have to consider against the development plan. And then we have to then consider it to be unsustainable because it's got to travel to those services by means that are other than by means of car primarily.
But the existing people in the existing premises, they don't have a problem with the access to the services.
So sorry, maybe I'm not being clear. They don't have a problem with it, I suppose, if they travel there by
Well,
car,
they say they don't.
or travel over or cross the A47
yeah,
foot, which potentially leads to a quite dangerous situation. And so by creating a new property, we do have to take that property on its own merits. And if you're creating a new building in the countryside, then we have to revert back to the development plan. That development says that we should be looking at sustainable development in sustainable locations, in which officers consider this isn't.
Right. Thank you, Chairman.
I think, sorry, Councillor Prutton, has taken me a little while to get to you, but if you could ask your question now, please.
Oh, no, I'll wait until the general discussion. It'll probably be better spoken there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, darling. And Councillor Riley, did you have a second question, or are you happy to wait until we've done the public speaking?
It is a second question in terms of clarification to Nigel, Chair. Yeah, Nigel, just absolute clarity on this point. You just referred to the noise issue, that I've raised, and the during the A47, and that what's to be expected is that there'll probably in that case be some mitigation with, raised barriers, etc., noise retention barriers, but that doesn't apply for new housing. But am I right in saying that the existing house that's on that plot would actually, because it already exists, would apply for the sound barriers if the A47 goes ahead? Because it's the same, isn't it?
The documentation I've seen didn't identify that mitigation measures were required as a consequence of the proposed dualling. What might be separate to that is whether there is an application process where existing residents can apply to Highways England if they consider that in any way, shape or form their property is blighted by that road improvement proposal. As I say,
that would be Sunny Acres as well.
Potentially,
Yeah.
but that relates to the existing property. As I say, we have to apply obviously development plan policy and noise requirements to new proposed development, and this is new proposed separate from that development consent order.
The Sunny Acres on the same plot could apply, so therefore the new house would also be affected by that. The mitigation would be put in. Okay, thank you, Nigel.
No, I'm not saying mitigation would be put in through that DCO in relation to the current application. The current application would have to provide its own, as no doubt the speakers will identify.
The point I'm raising here is Sunny Acres is on the same plot. The sound barrier goes in front of Sunny Acres if they did apply, as you just said. Therefore, the new property behind gets the benefit of that.
No, that's not what I'm saying. In terms of the DCO, and you need to disassociate this current application from the DCO. The DCO, as far as I can interpret it, has identified that mitigation measures, physical mitigation measures, are required on the south side to those properties that we indicated on the slide. It didn't indicate that noise mitigation measures, as a consequence of the DCO, were required on the north side. The report which has been commissioned in relation to the current application does indicate that some form of noise mitigation is required as a consequence of the existing road noise from the existing A47, that not on the basis of the DCO.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We will now move on to our public speakers. And we don't have any representation from the parish council, nor do we have any residents present who wish to voice their agreement with the officer's recommendation. However, we do have public speakers who wish to speak in favour of approving the application. So we will now move on to Officer Atherton. Could you please unmute Miss Anna Randallson? Thank you. Thank you for joining us this morning, Ms. Randallson. You will have 5 minutes now to address the committee. Unfortunately, we don't have a clock that we can share on the screen that would block you from our members. So what will happen is our host will advise you when you have 1 minute remaining. Is that acceptable to you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. Now, if you could please introduce yourself to the committee, and you will have 5 minutes starting from now.
Good morning. I'm Anna Randallson. Myself and my partner Ryan Woodward are the applicants for this proposal. We're seeking approval to self-build a very environmentally focused dwelling of high quality design and construction at the northeast edge of Blowfield, adjacent to the home of my parents. The proposed site is adjacent to the property of Sunny Acres on Yarmouth Road, just 125 metres from the settlement boundary. Local amenities such as the farm shop, the surgery or the school can be reached by a short walk of 5 to 15 minutes. This is via a route frequented by many of the villagers of Blowfield, who can often be seen walking past Sunny Acres throughout the year. My parents are in their 70s now and regularly use this route to visit friends in the village or the aforementioned amenities. The committee report states it cannot be certain that the method of delivering this site will be self-build, but according to the Self-Build and Custom House Building Act 2015, the definition of self-build and custom house building includes persons working for individuals of houses to be occupied as homes by those individuals. As the home has been designed in its entirety by Ryan and I for our own family, it is unequivocally a self-build, irrespective of the method of delivering the dwelling. Despite this, it is our intention to complete as much of the work ourselves as possible. The home has been designed as a spacious family home, focusing on energy efficiency, sustainability and comfort. Although not an architect, I work in the energy sector and am in the final stage of an engineering degree in environmental technologies, so I have an acute awareness of how critical it is to reduce our carbon footprint. For many, this would simply mean adding solar panels to reduce their electricity bills, but we've tried to consider the bigger picture. Of course, we'll have solar panels and we'll use these to heat the property, with an air source heat pump and underfloor heating, and a mechanical ventilation and heat recovery system to ensure a constant flow of fresh, clean air throughout the house. As you're no doubt aware, most heating and lighting in the home is needed in the evening, so a battery storage system will ensure that we can really use the solar power that we're generating. With the inevitable change to electric vehicles in the coming years, overnight car charging can also be drawn from the daytime solar in the batteries. An often overlooked aspect of household energy consumption is the power used to clean our mains water supplies, almost 50% of which does not need to be processed to a drinkable standard. A rainwater harvesting system will allow us to reduce the mains consumption significantly, as well as providing efficient management of surface water in the event of heavy rainfall. The principal construction of the house is insulated concrete formwork, which gives a building envelope that is not only double insulated, but that excels in airtightness like no other building method. This would be one of the first houses in Broadland to be constructed fully from ICF, and through careful combination of select technologies would help to raise standards of design more generally. So that's covered our energy efficiency and sustainability focuses. But comfort has also been an important factor in our design for the house. One of the biggest problems in modern homes today is overheating. Developers create well-insulated houses requiring little energy to heat, but come June, every window is open and we burn through energy running electric fans. To maintain comfort in the ever hotter summers, we've included triple glazed windows with a heat reflective coating and MVHR to provide ventilation. Another comfort aspect is the long-term use of the house. We want to raise a family here and have designed the house in accordance with the 16 criteria for the Lifetime Home Standards. Should access for disabled or elderly ever be required, all criteria can be met, including the facility to convert the home office to a ground level bed space with ensuite and an accessible route from the garage to the main living space. Concern has been raised on the design of the dwelling, including the height and massing and the grey stone for exterior finish. We're happy to change the stone to a red brick, such as the examples provided to committee members, to be more in keeping with surrounding properties. With the height and massing of the house, it is commonplace throughout Blowfield and indeed the Broadland district to find adjacent properties of varying height and massing, particularly in more rural settings. This can be seen in both old and new properties, as shown in the examples provided to the committee members. HOU 4 of the Blowfield Neighbourhood Plan states that new dwellings should respect character, height and massing of surrounding properties, not that it must match them. As a harms versus goods evaluation, the planning officer's consideration for harm is based on policy conflicts from the location. We can't move the proposed site, and we don't believe that there is any detrimental impact to the environment or to the visual landscape from this proposal. But the social and environmental good of approving this application is unquestionable. We'd like to raise our children in a home that respects the environment that it's situated in, with an appreciation of what they can do to create a sustainable future. And we'd like to be there for my parents to provide security and support. The events of the last year have shown us how well a community can pull together in times of need and just how important a neighbour can be. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Members, do you have any questions for our public speaker? And I must reiterate that it is just purely to clarify something the speaker has said and not to put any further points across. Councillor Copplestone?
I've got a question, please.
Okay, 2 seconds, Councillor Fisher. Councillor Copplestone?
Thank you very much for your presentation, Anna. I didn't see any topographical survey included with the case at all. How much higher? You talked about the height and mass of the proposed property. How much higher is the proposed property than the existing dwelling, Sunny Acres, please?
6 feet.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fisher?
Thank you, Chairman. Just really, I note the explanation of the energy conservation, the heating of the house. Could Ms. Vanson identify, is this house identified, or will it be identified to be built to passive house standards?
It will not. The reason for that is due to the cost and expense with certification for passive house would detract from the money we'd actually be able to spend on the environmental technologies to build it. Would actually make contrast to what we'd be able to produce due to the certification costs.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fisher, do you have another question?
Sorry, yeah, could I, yeah, could I just delve a little bit further into the environmental side of the build? The insulated concrete with the ventilation that you're proposing, can you actually explain why you identified that there's not another property like this in Broadland? I believe that there's various buildings on the UEA site that are this type of design and build and installation. Is that correct?
I'm not aware. I was speaking more to do with residential properties. Regarding commercial or education, etc. I personally don't actually have any information on that.
my knowledge, that's normally, or this particular build would normally be associated more with a larger commercial building rather than necessarily.
Yeah, it's quite an efficient time wise to build. It's also something that you can, it's something as a self-build, it's something that we physically are able. I can't lay bricks, but I can stack polystyrene, Lego and pour concrete in it for the functionality.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Beadle, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's really a question for the officers as against the applicant.
Okay, we can come to that in just a second. Do you mind if we just let the other two speakers speak?
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, it's just that I'm conscious that we need to keep going through the public, and we can come back to your question in just a moment. Okay, if there's no other questions for this for Anna, then we can move on to our next public speaker. Okay, thank you. And it is Mr. John Randlesome. And again, Mr. Randlesome, if I can just remind you that you will have 5 minutes, and the host will advise you when you have 1 minute remaining. Is that acceptable to you?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, lovely, thank you. And just to advise you, I've got 2 of you on the screen, but any one of you will be able to speak. Is that okay? Okay, lovely, thank you. If you could please introduce yourself, and you will have 5 minutes starting from now.
Good morning. I'm John Randlesome, resident of Sunny Acres and Anna's father. Christine and I decided to give part of the garden to our daughter and her partner so they might build a home and raise a family together there. We thought it would be better to give it to them while we are alive and can see them enjoy it rather than they wait until we are dead. It would also give us a security as we age and peace of mind for me, knowing someone will be there for Christine when I am gone. A point brought up in the committee report was amenity impact on us from overlooking. I do not see this as an issue for us or any future occupants, as it's only the drive and the front of the house that can be seen, and the extra surveillance would improve our safety. There is also a laurel hedge and several trees planted in that area, which as they mature will screen more of the drive anyway. We often cross the A47 to go into the village to visit the farm shop, post office and friends. We are not the only ones who use this route. We have friends in the village who are well into their 70s who often cross the road on foot to visit us before COVID. We also see quite a lot of people from the village who cross in the same place and either cycle or walk through the country lanes north of the A47 for exercise. Christine and I have lived here for several years and spent a lot of time in the garden, usually with friends. We're able to talk and relax without the noise having ever bothered us at all. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much. Members, do you have any questions for Mr. Randlesome? Councillor Copplestone?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Randlesome, there seems to be quite extensive buildings adjacent the proposed plot at the rear of your property. Have they ever been used for commercial use? Because I am concerned that of their future use, really, if the dwelling is approved. So I just wondered whether, a consideration to limit the commercial use would be considered. Thank you.
No, they've never been used for commercial use.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Have I got anyone else who needs to ask a question that I haven't seen on my screen? No? Okay, that's lovely. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Randlesome.
Thank you.
And we will now move on to our third and final speaker, and that's Mr. David Jones. And if we could just unmute Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones, thank you very much. And again, I just need to remind you that you will have 5 minutes, and the host will advise you when you have 1 minute. Is that acceptable to you?
That's fine, thank you.
Okay, thank you. If you could please introduce yourself, and you have 5 minutes starting from now.
Good morning, I'm David Jones, the agent. The proposal represents an individual set of circumstances. It would be a self-built home designed by the intended residents to exceptional environmental standards, and as an adaptable home for life. It would also introduce a neighbouring house to the applicant's parents. As a subdivision of the existing residential plot at Sunny Acres, the site is previously developed land as defined by the NPPF. The site is 125 metres from the settlement boundary of Blowfield, and this is a sustainable location for a home, being within walking and cycling distance of numerous facilities in the village, including bus services. These merits are conferred weight in the planning balance, such as by MPPF paragraph 78, the promotion of sustainable development in rural areas, 131, great weight to designs which promote high levels of sustainability or help raise the standard of design in an area, and 154, concerning small-scale renewable and low-carbon development. It is a legal requirement reiterated by the MPPF that planning applications are determined in accordance with the development plan, unless material considerations indicate otherwise. New concerns of your officers were only brought to our attention by the committee report. We have endeavoured to submit supporting documents since the publication of the report, and these have addressed the matters of connectivity, highway safety, impact on neighbouring amenity, design and noise impact. The A47 is already crossed at this point by local residents, and there is a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit. Nonetheless, the realignment and improvement project for this stretch of the A47 includes the building of a bridge to the east of the site. Our understanding is that Highways England are at an advanced stage in their preparations for the project, and that construction of the bridge across the A47 has a reasonable prospect of completion around the time of occupation. Highways England emailed the planning officer on Monday this week and confirmed the proposal will not affect their project and will not have any impact with respect to additional traffic. It should be noted that Highways England have had since August 2020, that's when we submitted the first of these two applications, to raise any highway safety fears about this proposal, and they have not. MPPF paragraph 109 reads, development should only be refused on highways grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety or the impacts on the road network would be severe. We have obtained the opinion of a transport expert at Royal Haskoning, who has advised a single dwelling would have a nominal impact on the A47 as trips generated by the proposed development would be very low, and it would be unreasonable to refuse permission for highway safety. Since the publication of the committee report, we have been able to obtain a report from an acoustic consultant, who in summary advises that noise from the road can be made acceptable in the circumstances. This would include mechanical ventilation and appropriate glazing, both which had already been proposed in the design, in addition to a barrier on the south and west boundaries of the plot. I can confirm that the applicants have agreed to have these measures conditioned and would erect the 2-metre fence within the current hawthorn hedging. It should be noted that your officers have received no objections and no representations raising concerns, including in the responses by the Parish Council and County Council Highways. The proposal meets the definition of sustainable development, for which there is a stated presumption in favour in the local plan and in the MPPF. The 3 dimensions of sustainable development are all improved by the proposal. Economic, with regard to sustainable village services, or sustaining those services. Environmental, which the applicant has clearly demonstrated, and social, such as providing amenity benefits to the existing dwelling and its occupants.
1 minute remaining.
The occupants, both now and in perpetuity. The significant merits of the proposal are material considerations, and I respectfully suggest indicates an approval in accordance with planning law and national policy. Consultee responses and the supporting documents now submitted appear to resolve officer concerns. As your officer has stated this morning, the matter of noise impact can be mitigated and would not by itself stand as a reason for refusal. I hope you'll be able to support the proposal, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And members, do you have any questions for our public speaker? Simply to clarify anything that has been said. Just check on my other screen. Nope, there's nothing. Okay, well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time this morning. It's very much appreciated. We as members will now go into discussion, and we'll end up with a vote in just a few minutes. Okay, so thank you for your time, and members, if you could please unmute yourselves. We will remain unmuted as a committee, and if I could ask you, if you'd like to comment, to please register your request to do so in the chat, or let me know and I'll come to you in turn. After this discussion, the committee will then determine the decision of the application on the proposal and seconding of the application. If necessary during this discussion, We will have Officer Harris and Officer Burgess to advise on any questions that you might have. And if I could go to Councillor Beadle, if you would like to put your question forward now, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is to the planning officers, really. The described developments, can it be described in planning terms as what is known colloquially as a granny annex? And that's the first question. And the second one is, as a planning committee, can we stipulate that if this development is given consent, that it stays in a joint ownership with the neighbouring property? Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, just writing those down. Again, as I often do, take the second one. I don't feel that we could condition it in this instance to stay with the existing property. In terms of a granny annex, from my perspective, unless Nigel disagrees, I don't think this constitutes a granny annex at all. Granny annex would have to share certain facilities within the existing property to class as that, and clearly this is a separate dwelling with significant kitchens and bathrooms and everything else for itself. It's clearly a self-contained dwelling, in my opinion.
Okay.
Just if I can add to that, Chair, I mean, the development management document, housing chapter, does make it clear outbuildings where they have all the accommodation necessary for independent living cannot be classed as an annex. And in fact, your policies require you to determine it on the basis of a new dwelling, which this is. An option could be to extend the dwelling with an annex. The property has itself been extended fairly recently. It's gone from a hipped roof bungalow to a quite a large chalet dwelling. Certainly, if an annex were promoted, I think that would be received more favourably in a planning perspective. But in terms of the application that's before you, it's a separate, unassociated dwelling. And no, we couldn't impose a condition restricting the occupation of it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Prutton?
Yes, thank you. I think this is a comment more than a question, but it's about that lovely row of poplar trees that is to the west of the property. But as people use the existing A47 and indeed with the revision to that map, I am persuaded that there is quite a deal of screening, noise mitigation by that row of poplars. And my query hangs around, can either of the officers say whether they know whether that row of poplars is going to go in the road works for the extension of the A47, because these poplars haven't been mentioned by anybody. Thank you, Nigel.
Officer, okay,
I'll
Officer
come
Harris?
back on that. I mean, trees themselves provide very little acoustic attenuation, and bearing in mind they're also deciduous trees as well, so they'll lose their leaves in the winter. I'm not aware that those poplars would have to be removed as a consequence of the DCO, but in terms of their acoustic impact, they have very little, if any, attenuation in terms of noise impact.
But there is also the visual, the visual screening they give for the property by people coming along the A47.
I think you would still register the dwelling. Poplars are a fairly light foliage type of tree. Yeah. They are deciduous as well, so wintertime it won't have leaves on. You will see the dwelling. You saw from the visual presentation, you'll see it from the on all boundaries, and particularly to the north, given the highway network, and you could see the existing chalet within the wider landscape, and obviously the form and massing of this proposal is much bigger than that.
All right then. Okay, point taken, but thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Could I just add
Okay.
one small thing, if that's okay? Although it's not a small thing, it's about poplars, because they're very big, but they also have a reasonably limited life. Poplars as well. I look after the tree team as well, and I'm very keen on them trying to retain them when we can, but they're often telling me that they've got a very limited lifespan to, max maybe about 70 years or so. So again, there's no guarantee that they will be there in the future.
No. Okay then. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Fisher?
Really, this was for the when we start the debate. It's not a question. So if we
we've
are
started
part
the
of-
debate. Yeah, you go
Okay.
ahead.
Thank you. I mean, it's just that this particular application is not dissimilar to 2 or 3 that we've had lately, where we're looking for buildings of innovative design, of environmental character, low energy, pacifiers, as I mentioned, and whether they should be an exception, and therefore we can ignore the policy considerations. Now we've had a couple come up recently that again committee have decided to go against recommendation. I really don't believe this one is innovative enough. I think design wise it doesn't strike me when I look at it. This is great. What a tremendous design. I agree that some of the environmental measures have been thought through. A good. I agree with the battery storage to back up the solar. But I think at this particular time, with this particular application, this particular design, I really cannot do anything but support the officer's recommendation with the conditions as laid out and reasons on page 35, paragraph 531. So I would like to move the officer's recommendation, please. Thank you.
I'll second that, Madam Chairman.
I didn't get who that was. Sorry. Who
I'm
seconded?
moving the seconding John Fisher's
Councillor Ward. Okay, thank you. Okay, if I can move to
No, Madam Chairman.
Sorry, Chairman, that was
wasn't me.
Councillor
No.
it was Councillor Adams.
wasn't
and I was
Ward.
about
It wasn't
to say,
Ward, Chairman. It wasn't Councillor Ward.
No, apologies. I was just saying that I said Councillor Ward. I know it's Councillor Adams. It's now Councillor Ward to speak.
No. Oh,
Okay.
right. Thank
And
you.
I'm in the queue, Chair, as well.
Right.
Yes,
thank you very
I've
much,
got you all in the
Chairman.
queue. Just bear with me just a second.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, although this house is outside the development boundary, I think there are material considerations that outweigh that, actually. I believe it is an exceptional house. I like the look of it. I don't see how it can be detrimental to the impact on the surrounding area. I think it enhances the surrounding area. And I think it is in a sustainable location. We've heard that it's within easy walking distance of the village. And I don't think noise is a big problem. I think noise has been a bit overstated, actually. So I would not go along with the officer's recommendation on this, I'm afraid.
Thank you.
I would support Councillor Ward's comments.
Okay, well,
I also
at the moment we're just going with the first proposal and we're going with the discussion. So if I could just ask Councillor Copperstone, please, you're the next on my list.
Yes, I sort of tend to agree with Councillor Ward, actually. The environmental credentials of this project seem to be fairly exceptional, and the new sort of building methods, I think, are, is very, using lots of new innovation, are very, very good. My concern is the commercial or the buildings near to the boundary, or which are the rear of Sunny Acres. If this were to go ahead, I'd want a restriction on those buildings for any future commercial use. And could Nigel, could you just verify? I'm not very keen on the light coloured render because I think it will be seen from miles around. I saw an email last night about using a brick fascia instead. Is that the case, please? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. If I can just pick up on some other issues as well. I mean, I think certainly the technologies which are being advanced are laudable, but that shouldn't be seen as a trump card, because we would be seeing many more developments in the countryside where people are saying, I want to promote something that has eco-credentials, sustainable means of development, etc. I would remind members we had a similar proposal for a high eco-credential property in Caldershall, which went to the September Planning Committee, which there was mixed debate, but that was refused by Planning Committee, again, on the basis of laudable technologies, but a location that was outside settlement limit and didn't carry material considerations that could override the harm of being contrary to your development plan. In terms of, yes, you could change materials. I would hesitate to say that it's not the remit of the committee, obviously, to redesign a proposal. What you've got to determine is what's in front of you in terms of the materials, the form, the massing, etc. And in terms of location as well, I think it certainly doesn't meet the definition of sustainable development because it doesn't have that accessible connectivity. The hazard of going across a dual carriageway in highway terms, whether it's pedestrian safety, cycle safety, etc., is a major constraint, and a major constraint to saying that this is a sustainable form of development in connectivity terms. And that's why the settlement limit has been drawn as such to all on the south side for Blowfield and all on the north side for Blowfield Heath. And the final point, in terms of those buildings, Councillor Copplestone, from recollection of a conversation with a case officer, he did indicate to me that they have a restriction on their use to purposes ancillary to the residential use of the dwelling. So in that respect, they can't be used separately for business purposes without a subsequent change of use.
Okay, thank you. I hope that answers your questions. And we'll go to Councillor Karima Guven-Lou, please.
As far as I'm concerned, I think this is a very highly designed, environmentally built house. On reasons for refusal on the demonstrate 5-year housing plan, yes, that's fine to look at that if you're looking at a big development. This is an individual home for the person who's building it. Which I have sympathy for. We've gone through all the design facilities, the triple glazed windows and everything like that. I think that's perfectly fine. The boundary that overlooking for the Sunny Acres, I find that a bit misleading when you say 16 metres from Sunny Acres. That's from the boundary of the property. It's not from the actual house.
Yeah.
So it's further away, and the noise mitigation we've been through. So as far as I'm concerned, I would vote for the building of this house and against the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. And we go to Councillor Fulcher.
Thank you, Chairman. I think this building is an exceptional development in relation to the environmental situation. And one concern I have is crossing the dual carriageway, but clearly I think this is not an absolute reason for turning it down. And in view of the advanced environmental situation, as far as it's concerned, I'm inclined to reject the overall officer's recommendation on this. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, looking at the application and also the listening to the agents point by point to the NPF and also the local plan, there is a presumption here, we all know it, in terms in favour of development, and you can actually have development outside the settlement limit. We agreed actually at our last meeting for a property outside the settlement limit because it was pretty close to the existing settlement, and also the harms and everything else did not outweigh the benefit. So we do agree them outside the settlement limit. It depends upon the circumstances accordingly. The vote that you referred to, Nigel, was actually a 6-5 vote on the previous one. So it's a very close debate on the previous one that you referred to in Coltshaw. And to my mind, I don't think actually, when you look at the policies, the presumption to the development, we should be given to the development, because all of the issues that have been raised within the officer's report have been adequately answered. The issues in terms of noise, we've had the residents as well clearly state that they will be putting those measures in. The red brick issue as well, I heard very clearly the residents say in response to the officers, which is very late, by the way, when the residents found out about it, from what I can see of it, they are also prepared to put in red brick as well, which answers Joe's point. The issue in terms of the A47 and noise, I've found very, very confusing. I don't think it's an issue whatsoever. The A47 in terms of development will be developed, and there'll be mitigation for existing housing accordingly. But within the existing situation that Nigel described, the residents have clearly stated they are prepared to put in the noise abatement. This is within an existing plot. It's within. It's not a green field off to some other location. When you look at the views of where it is, there's no impact on the landscape whatsoever. If you look at MPF and 109, etc., and there is absolutely, from what I can see here, no reason actually to object to this, because every single point has been answered. It's pretty close to the settlement limit. We have agreed these before, and under no set of circumstances could I vote for the officer's recommendation on this one.
Okay, thank you. Nigel, I will give you a call back in just 2 minutes. I just need to go to Councillor Beadle. You're on mute. Sorry, can you just unmute yourself?
Mine doesn't work when you're trying to make me do it.
Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Can I say I'd like to apologise to the residents first, because I've actually been down this private drive without knowing it's a private drive. And can I suggest that other people do the same as well? It is accessed off the current part of the dual carriageway, and that particular access is actually planned to be blocked up as part of any highway improvements for the A47. And therefore, to drive and probably actually to walk, you'd actually have to travel eastwards along the extended private access to the new bridge and then come back again. So I think it would actually make it more isolated. The sound issue on the properties to the south of the current dual carriageway, from what I recall, is actually on a small bank, and it is actually indicated on page 26 on the of the site plan. So, and it increases to a very large bank as it goes under the bridge, which links the northern rural area to the main village of Blowfield. It is a very large property. It is an open site. You will see it from several hundred yards, maybe into the terms of greater than that when built. It is significant. It's significantly higher than the existing chalet bungalow, and the footprint is quite large. So it was significant in the height and mass. The property, I think, is totally out of keeping with the area generally. It is not in a proper location and access to local facilities, and will be worse once the road is improved. And therefore, I support the proposal to refuse, as already proposed and seconded. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you very much. And I think that Councillor Leggett might be our last person. So, Councillor Leggett, it's your turn.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Beadle did make reference to the point, because I think it was said that there would be, not immediately, but in the future, a bridge over that road anyway to facilitate the people going from the proposed site over down to the services. And also, I think Mr. Randleson did relate to the fact, something in his letter, there are several trees and a laurel hedge planted in that vicinity, which when mature will alleviate some concern. Now, I'm not sure if that applies to the particular area, but that was a statement that was made.
Chair, just to clarify that, I did mention that the bridge, it is to the east of the site, and I would say it's a quarter of a mile to a third of a mile east of the site. So you'd actually have to do that distance, go over the bridge, and then come back the same distance to get to the same place the other side of the road. So I did mention that bridge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which actually makes it less sustainable than it is currently, and I would argue it's not currently sustainable.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Leggett, do you have anything else to add?
No, I was just to clarify whether the officers had what they would comment on the several trees and a laurel
Yes or
hedge
no?
in the future.
Okay, we will ask Officer Harris, please.
Sorry, which trees are we referring to, Councillor Leggett?
Well, that's a good point, because I would you'd have to refer that to Mr. Randlson, because he said in his letter dated.
Unfortunately, we can't.
Oh,
If I can help, I mean, there is some ornamental planting within the curtilage of that property, and that would have to be removed. I'm not aware that it would impact on any boundary trees.
no, well, he says there are several trees and a laurel hedge planted in that vicinity, which I assume is the vicinity that was being stated would be overlooking, which, when mature, will alleviate this concern.
Okay, no, I appreciate where you're coming from there. That's internal, and that's to deal with the relationship of one property to the other. I mean, what I don't want to get hung up on are the internal issues or the noise issues. We have qualified that I think on their own, the overlooking issues, on balance, would you refuse it purely on that basis? No, I don't think you would. Noise mitigation, would you refuse it on that basis? No, I don't think you would, because you could impose a condition that required sound attenuation measures. The thing not to miss here, and the main determining factor, is the presumption in favour of the development plan, and the fact that this is outside of the settlement limit. We have a 5-year land supply. It's not sustainable development, and there would be ramifications of how we could respectfully resist similar forms of development in a scenario situation similar to this. You talked about the bridge over the A47 providing improved connectivity, and then therefore allowing connectivity on this north side. That argument could be repeated, and you could then have further applications for development on the north side of the A47, again outside of the settlement limit in an unsustainable location. And this is the crux of the matter here, that we don't consider there are material considerations that override fundamentally determining this in accordance with the development plan. Councillor Riley did refer to sustainable development and ticking all the boxes in terms of policies, etc. I'd have to obviously respectfully disagree in that respect. I appreciate comments about design and the technologies, etc., but this isn't something that's being promoted under an exception of paragraph 79 of the MPPF, which is a policy which can override applications when you determine it against the development plan. And that was a case for an application recently, another one in Coldershall in the Walled Garden, where officers were content that that proposal met the very high bar that paragraph 79 sets in relation to the MPPF. That's not the case here. The other point I would make is reference has been made to previously developed land and being a brownfield site. As this is within the curtilage of a dwelling, specifically the MPPF excludes residential curtilage from the definition of previously developed land. So you could not treat this as a brownfield site. But in any event, if it was brownfield, we would still be coming to you to say that this is an unsustainable location because of the issues which are set out in your committee report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, I'm not sure if anybody else has got any other points that they need to put forward. And I just need to apologise to the public speakers. I'm really sorry. I know this is totally frustrating for you, but we can't bring you into the debate at all anymore now. Okay, was that Councillor Karimi Guvalu? Did you? Yes.
Yeah, I think with respect to Officer Harris, a lot of those things are subjective. It's 125 metres from the boundary. We've approved houses in the past outside the official boundary. Sustainable development, there's already a property on that piece of land, so we cannot say it's unsustainable because somebody's living there already. And as far as Councillor Beadle said about over the height of the property, it's 6 foot, it's 2 metres higher. It's quite a large building. 6 foot is negligible to the overall size of the building, I think. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And anyone else who needs to say something before we go to, because we have had a proposer and we have had a seconder, and I think we need to go to the vote. Has anybody got anything else to say? Leah, have you got anybody in the chat who I haven't got on my screen?
No further people I can see of.
Okay. Okay. Anybody got anything else to say before we do this? Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it has been proposed by Councillor Fisher and seconded by Councillor Adams that we should, as a committee, agree to accept the officer's recommendation to refuse this application as per the refusal reasons on page 34 of your papers. Can I ask Officer Matthews, please, to do the roll call and present the vote to us? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So if I could just clarify, when we go through members alphabetically, if you could indicate if you are for or against the recommendation for refusal. So you are for or against. That's Councillor Adams.
For.
Councillor Beadle.
For.
Councillor Copplestone.
Abstain.
Councillor Fisher.
For.
Councillor Fulcher.
Against.
Councillor Karimi Guvenlou.
Against.
Councillor Lawn.
For.
Councillor Leggett.
Against.
Councillor Pratton.
Against.
Councillor Riley.
Against.
And Councillor Ward.
Against.
Thank you, Chairman. Just bear with me a second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6.
Sorry, Don, I can help. It was 6 against, 4 for, and 1 abstention.
I just wanted to double check that. But yes, you're correct. That proposal, Chairman, is lost.
Okay, so we now need to.
Someone needs to put another alternative
propose,
proposal, Chairman.
And
Yes,
you have
Chair.
to have the policies to go forward with it, please, Councillor Riley.
Yes. We the agent actually specified the policies. I normally got my NFP document and local plan with me, but I haven't today. But the policies, excuse me, the policies are that the mitigation, sorry, that the benefit of agreeing with the presumed building permission are because this does have an environmental benefit to its design. It is it's future proofed in terms of ecological reasons. It fits with also our policy on some innovation around that as well. We have the build using, I'm fully aware of the system that they are talking about, and it is being used in America in residential quite extensively now. There are substantial benefits in terms of that concrete polystyrene build. That would be a plus for sure. So there are a number of policies there under the local plan that we could argue on, and very similar to the one that we agreed with at the last planning meeting, which is outside the settlement limits. The reasoning is there, and the agent actually specified those, I believe, in his submission. I don't actually have the policy documents with me to give the exact coding at the moment.
Officer Harris, do you have any? Could you relate to those
just
comments?
Firstly, Councillor Riley referred to the previous one at committee. I think the one he's referring to was probably the one that was promoted under paragraph 79 of the MPPF, where it met the very high bar of innovative landscape benefit, etc. That isn't the case here. This proposal isn't being promoted under paragraph 79, so you couldn't offer that as a degree of support. The only thing I really took from what was said is that you consider sort of the technologies, the innovative nature of the application to be the benefit that outweighs the harm of all the other policies in terms of providing for development that should be within a development boundary if it's to be considered to be a sustainable form of development. Other than that, I'm not seeing a great deal of policy benefit that you could say this ticks the boxes for.
Yeah, well, as we were saying, Nigel, you know, there is that in terms of the ecological benefit there. Is innovative in that way. I don't believe that there's been another one that we've given planning permission for that contains those benefits within them. And we don't believe, as we've already said, a number of us, that this is actually detrimental to the amenity, for sure. The 16 metres is not actually to the house, it was the boundary, so there's not an issue there on amenity. In terms of mass and impact, people can have a house that's 16,000 square feet, depends upon the settings. In this particular setting, it's not causing an issue with the landscape, which was another, you know, setting issue. Don't believe that is the case either. So on that basis, the innovation would outweigh, because those other issues are actually not real issues, and we won't be pointing them up in terms of, you know, our permission on this, and therefore it's not an issue with the inspectorate.
I remain concerned, Chair, and would have to sort of flag caution to members that if you are hanging so much weight on the technologies which are being associated with this development, that if you were to approve it, that could just be repeated.
Yeah, Nigel,
in many other instances.
Councillor Riley, just let the officer speak, please.
Sorry.
And yes, I accept that you're putting that forward as a benefit, but I don't think that benefit outweighs the harms which have been identified in terms of building in this location.
Okay, yeah, this is the point, Nigel. We have not agreed with the officers that the harms that is flagged up in the report are harms. This is the whole point.
Okay, Officer
That's
Riley.
the whole point.
Forgive me, Officer Riley, but you need to understand that even if your heart tells you something, you have to have the policies to go with it.
Yes, and I'm addressing that, so I'll address this back, Chair, now. Nigel, I've put forward the reasoning in terms of that innovation. Nigel's counter to that, you've just heard, Chair. I'm responding to Nigel's counter. Nigel's counter is that it doesn't outweigh the harms in the report. So we're now talking about the policies within the report. On those policies within the report, one, this committee did not agree that they actually do cause those harms.
Right.
They're gone.
Okay.
So there's no counter to that, Nigel, in reference to that, and there's no inspector in terms of in relation to that whatsoever.
Okay.
Because we don't agree they do cause those harms.
The only thing that I can see from what you're putting your case forward on is that you think that the innovative benefits, which outweigh the harm, to accept this, to make it this as acceptable, to be outside of the settlement area and the sustainability of this area. You're saying that's the only thing that we can see. That
also we can add in, can't we? You know, and I know Helen and Phil's helped out on this before in the past once we made this sort of decision. But we can also point to the point also, even though we know we've got the supply on self-build plots, etc., and we're in the 5-year limit. This is an additional dwelling that will provide housing. It is an additional dwelling in terms of the self-build nature of this. So we can refer to those points as well, bearing in mind that we do not agree with the policies put forward, that it causes the harms. We don't believe that it does cause those harms. So if it doesn't cause those harms, this tips the scale on balance. You don't need much to tip the scale on balance, and it's subjective, because the presumption is to give permission unless blah, 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 which was explained. So you don't need much to tip that balance, as long as you've codified and we've said we do not believe that those harms exist. It's a balance that just tips.
It's not just saying it outweighs the harms, it's saying that there are material considerations that outweigh determining the application in accordance with the development plan. I would again just come back to the point of self-build. That doesn't building outside of a settlement limit does not trump determining in accordance with the development plan. And you do have that appeal decision at Perone's Farm, where the inspector acknowledged that and dismissed that application. So there is precedent in terms of what's in the locality, in terms of benefits which you're alluding to, which have actually been dismissed in relation to other development proposals.
And again, we have on page 32, paragraph 513, a character and appearance where it doesn't adhere to the neighbourhood plan. The appearance is outside, character is out the area is, so it's, I do appreciate, Councillor Riley, that you're, and I understand what the majority of the committee has said, but as it's always been determined that we have to go forward with reasonings for it.
Okay, can I deal with your 2 points and you've just raised, Chair?
Yes, in page 32.513.
Yeah. So the the resident, and we've said this 3 times in this meeting now, has actually addressed the officer's concerns, and it was very late on. I've heard that as well. It's very late on that they would address the building in red brick, so it's in keeping.
And we can make that as a condition.
Exactly. And the second point you raised, Chair, which was the neighbourhood plan in keeping, therefore it would be in keeping. And we also know from looking at the residential development there, slight differences in housing as well. It actually does fit with the neighbourhood plan. They've also, so we can make it as a condition in terms of the soundproofing. We can make it a condition. We can put on all the conditions.
Small scale development.
And it is small scale. It's one house.
Okay. Okay, so officers, do you feel that we have enough to go forward with to the next vote? I do appreciate it goes against everything that you've presented to us this morning, but we do have to resolve this situation. So we can say that it's an innovative benefits which they feel will outweigh the harm and make it acceptable for the settlement and sustainability. We can put a condition on to say that it should be a red brick. We can say under the neighbourhood plan that it's a small development which should be small scale development and should respect the character, height, massing of the surrounding properties. I'm sorry, I'm clutching at straws. I'm just trying to find things.
I think they're fine, Chair. I think they're fine, Chair.
I mean, to summarise, what I think Councillor Riley is saying is that it does not have an impact on the character and appearance of the surrounding area, and that the technologies which are being promoted are material and weigh in favour of the development proposal. Obviously, that again is subjective and is something that needs to be put to the vote.
It's subjective. It always is, Nigel.
Okay. Now, Councillor Riley, I don't have a second. I don't have a second for your proposal as yet. So we need someone to. Okay, Councillor Ward. But Councillor Beadle, do you want to speak before we go? Okay. And Councillor Fulcher, I've got you too.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. For anybody putting a resolution forward, they've got to quote the policies. And,
we've just done that. We've just done that.
We've
I understand that. They've just to repeat, anybody putting forward a proposal has to quote the policies. And as the chairman said, we are clutching at straws here. It is very difficult to quote the policies and justify the quotes because they appear to be taking quotes out of context. And I actually think if we pass this, we are making a mistake and we should not actually pass this, Chair. And so I urge everybody to think carefully about how these policies are being used to possibly approve this application.
Okay, Councillor Riley, just give us a second.
Sure.
And I totally agree with you, Councillor Beadle, but as chair, I have to find a way of finding something that we can bring forward. It's not, if the majority of the committee says one thing, then we have to go with that. But we, as you can see from this discussion, that we are going round in circles and trying to find something. Everything is an interpretation so far. We haven't got anything that is structurally safe for us to vote on this. I totally agree with you that if we vote on this, then we will be making a big mistake. We don't have anything that is structurally safe for us to go forward with that vote. And whenever we come to this next vote, I need you to understand the situation that you're actually voting on. So, Councillor Fulcher.
Thank you. I think the main point I would wish to add to this would be the self-built aspect, because this is an element of government policy at the present time to encourage self-build, and if that could be cemented in one of the reasons for approval, I would be happy with that.
Chair, just in terms of mover on this as well, we have just defined the policies with the officers that we could then proceed on the vote for, and we've had a seconder for that, so we do have the basis now for that. We've just done that. You know.
Okay, Officer Harris, did you have your hand again?
It was just on the issue of self-build. The report does identify that we have a land supply in terms of self-build, and as I referred to that earlier appeal decision, self-build in itself does not trump determining applications in accordance with other policies in your development plan, because it could again be repeated too often, and we come back to the point of the location of development. Essentially policies GC1 and GC2 of what policies are going to be advanced that are material and outweigh determining the application in accordance with GC1 and GC2 in terms of sustainable development. This isn't sustainable because of connectivity and therefore location of developments as well outside of settlement limit. And at the moment, the only benefits I'm hearing are that this won't have an impact on the character and appearance of the locality, and it involves modern laudable technologies, which in themselves I don't consider give you a sufficient policy base to determine the application in this location.
Okay.
Yes.
Can I ask a question?
We've heard that.
Just 2 seconds. Councillor Riley, would you like to put yourself on mute? Okay, Councillor Ward.
Yes, well, with due respect to Officer Harris, I think a lot of us think this is a sustainable place for this property. And I don't think we're giving enough weight to the fact that it's within the existing curtilage of an existing property. I think that there's a lot of weight should be given to that. I think the only thing I would agree with the officers on is that it's outside the settlement limit, but everything else I think we disagree on. But the fact that it is outside the settlement limit, I think there are mitigating circumstances, and those have all been very well detailed.
Okay.
So I'm still happy to say.
Thank you. And Councillor Karina Guvenlu.
Can I ask a question, Officer Harris, about self-builds? Are we saying that we can't approve any more self-builds if the register is full?
Not at all, but the presumption is we look to locate them in sustainable locations.
And this is where we disagree, because some of us think that is sustainable and some don't.
Yes,
so
and
and that's what you will need to distill it down to and to vote upon.
Thank you, Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. No, I cannot support this going forward as an approval. I've had the opportunity of going through both the DPD and the MPPF, trying to find and help reasons why we should approve this. And every single paragraph that I look at says the complete opposite. We shouldn't be looking to approve this. And I'm not prepared to take a leap in the dark on the basis that no real policy proposals are being put forward for refusal. We've had sort of people's opinion of what should be a refusal, but no actual planning policies have been quoted from either the DPD or the MPPF to sustain this particular decision to approve. So no, I'm certainly not. And I think Nigel Harris is absolutely right. We've had in the past where we have approved things contrary to very strong officer advice, which we're getting in this case, and it has led, and I think particularly Fir Cobbett Road and Taborham, where we allowed one and then we finished up with 8, because having allowed one, we refused another one. It went to the planning inspector and said, well, you've allowed one already, so I can't see the problem with you allowing another one. And this is going to be your problem, that you haven't just got to look at this application, you've got to look at the round and the way that this could very well open the door for further applications, which you might very well want to refuse, and probably on quite good grounds, only for a planning inspector to come in and say, well, I can't see the harm because you have allowed something exactly the same somewhere else. So yes, fine. I'm gonna vote against approval. If you go ahead, fine, but on your own heads be it. Don't, when something goes against, or a planning inspector overturns a decision which you've reached at, don't moan about it, is all I will say. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Officer Burgess.
Yeah, so actually, Councillor Adams has picked up on pretty much most of what I was going to say, but I'll perhaps put it in.
Oh, sorry, Ben.
No, that's fine. Actually, I suppose to push that forward slightly, if I were then on the other side of the fence and I was an agent, I'd be very happy with this decision, because it's doing that, if it were to be approved, because it's doing exactly that. I think it leaves us open to predatory applications coming in, with us struggling potentially to refuse them in the future, because of pretty much everything that Councillor Adams has said.
Okay. Anybody else got anything to say? No. Okay. Well,
Councillor Fisher, sorry, Chairman.
Councillor Fisher.
Sorry, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I know a lot of planning is very subjective and very opinion based, but I think there was reference made earlier to paragraph 79 in the NPPF. That is the only possible way you could say, yes, this development is allowed, because that's saying we can build, if you've got a specific, innovative, unique design that really justifies building outside the development boundary, then go for that. No one's mentioned that yet. And I really cannot see how dodging about on whether we think a particular policy is yes or in favour or against. And I really could not support any approval of this particular application, and it's very seldom I agree with Councillor Adams, but I do this time. It's up to individuals voting abilities and decisions, but I really can't support any change. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I just need to say that as chair of this planning committee, we are very professional in everything that we do. Broadland District Council, I'm very, very proud of the fact that I chair this planning committee, but I need you to be aware that it is our duty to follow all of the planning policies that we have in place at the moment. And as I've said earlier, your heart might tell you one thing, but your policies have to tell you what we put in place. There's no point in putting a policy paper in place if we're not going to adhere to it. I totally understand what you're saying, that you feel that this is sustainable, but according to our policies, it's not. So that's what you have to remember whenever we go to this next vote. We have got a couple of things that we can use, that we will take this forward to the vote to refuse the officer's recommendation. But we have to understand that we've got a duty here, and we have to do what is best for Broadland District. And the officers have given you a very good presentation. You've also put a very good argument forward, but at the end of the day, the reasons for refusal are stated on page 36, and that's what the officers recommended, and that's what, in my opinion, we should go with. But it is now, we'll go forward to the vote. And I've got it that it has been proposed by Councillor Riley, seconded by Councillor Ward, that we as a committee should disagree to accept the officer's recommendation to refuse the application as per their reasons for refusal on page 34 of your papers. And we therefore agree to consent to the application for the reasons as stated by the proposer and the seconder to approve. The only, what I can see, and Officer Matthews or officers, if you can please advise me if I'm wrong here, or if Councillor Riley, if you can advise me if I'm wrong. But the only thing that I can see is that you think that the design is innovative benefits which outweigh the harm, to accept this as, and it encourages to accept it to be outside the settlement. We can put, and this is in an area that you feel is the sustainability is there. We can put in a condition that it should be a red brick. And the other point that you're putting forward for your reasons for refusing the officer's recommendation is that it does adhere, in your opinion, to the Blowfield neighbourhood plan.
Yep.
Okay. Is that okay with you, Officer Matthews?
From a planning point of view, Chairman, I'd have to bow to one of the planning officers to comment on those reasons. I'm happy to take it forward to the vote if the planning officers are happy that we have clarified those reasons sufficiently.
But you would have those as the reasons for Councillor Riley proposing it. Officer Harris.
I just need to qualify that what I'm not hearing is that we're endorsing this as a paragraph 79 dwelling, because it hasn't been promoted as such. We haven't assessed it on that basis, and in my opinion it doesn't meet the criteria of paragraph 79. The only thing I'm hearing is that you're giving weight to the innovative technologies and that there is an opinion that it doesn't have an impact on the character and appearance of the surrounding area. The area I'm struggling with is how this is sustainable in connectivity terms, and I can't see that those benefits outweigh that disbenefit that it's not well connected to services and facilities.
Okay, I think that we've done enough discussion on it. Are we able to go forward?
Yeah.
Officer.
I think you've got enough, and you need to put it to members now and see what the vote is.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so as I've just said, for all of those reasons stated below, that Officer Matthews, if you could please go to the vote. And this time we are voting to say that we disagree with the officer's recommendation to refuse this application and approve the application.
Thank you, Chairman.
Officer Matthews.
So if I call members' names alphabetically, if you indicate if you are for or against approval. Councillor Adams.
Against approval.
Councillor Beadle.
Against approval.
Councillor Copplestone.
Abstain.
It's the wrong vote.
Councillor Fisher.
Against.
Councillor Fulcher.
For approval.
Councillor Karimi-Given-Liu.
For approval.
Councillor Lawn.
Against.
Councillor Leggett.
For approval.
Councillor Prutton.
For approval.
Councillor Riley.
For.
And Councillor Ward.
For.
Chairman, the results are 6 members for approval, 4 members against and 1 abstention. So that recommendation for approval is carried.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen. We will now move on to item number 6. And that is on our agenda, that is the appeals that have been lodged. So if we could ask Officer Harris to deal with those, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just scrolling down to find those ones. So yeah, on page 37, we've got a list of appeals determined and a new notice of a new appeal. The one at Taverham was a backland subdivision. We'd refused, and the inspector agreed that it was a form of development that was cramped and had an impact on the neighbouring properties by virtue of taking vehicular movements to the side and to the rear of existing properties. The scheme at Reedham was outside of the settlement limit, unsustainable location. That was refused by officers and dismissed by the inspector. The final item on there is Blackwell Avenue, Sproston, just notification of an appeal that's been lodged. I think that's against a condition that required obscure glazing of a window that was considered to overlook a neighbour's curtilage, and that's subject to a written rep's appeal. So we await the outcome on that one.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that brings our meeting to a close this morning. Thank you.